Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Watch Charts YouTube channel. I'm Hamza, and today I'm going to be talking about 72 Rolex models that you can buy today for less than retail. I think in the general conversation around Rolex as a brand and the watches that Rolex produces, there is a generally well understood sort of sense that their entire catalog sells for over retail. But of course, once you look at it more specifically and more precisely, you'll come to find that not only does Rolex make many variations of all of the popular watches that we think of, but also that when you look closer, there's actually very many of them, and in this case, dozens, that can be found on the secondary market today for less than their retail price. So this chart, I think, helps explain to some degree why we think of Rolex as sort of universally trading for above their retail prices. And I think I've certainly been guilty of that sort of generalization in the past. But this is our market index shown over a period of the previous 3 years. And the way that this market index is calculated is we take the 30 most highly traded Rolex references by transaction value, and then weight them by transaction value and compute their average market price. And that's the number that you see, which today sits at 28,788. But what this chart also shows is that since basically the summer of 2020, so basically once the pandemic kicked off, the market for these watches started rising, their values went up, and then as we entered 2022, we sort of accelerated into quite a drastic peak. That peak happened sometime in February to March of 2022. And then since then, the market has been in a phase of correcting. And maybe since October or November, it's been somewhat sort of, the pace of decline certainly has slowed down, but that doesn't mean that the market may not continue falling further. There are signs that suggest maybe that's no longer happening, but of course, it's impossible to say where the market will go from today. So what we'll do now is actually we'll look at some specific listings for watches, not from this index, but from Rolex that you can buy today that are in production. And we'll go through some active listings that demonstrate that whatever the retail prices for these watches, the secondary market performance today and their secondary market prices today suggest that these watches are in fact available for less than retail. And we'll do this by using two different measures. We'll look at the market price, and then we'll also look at what we call the market range, which is basically a measure of the volatility. So one standard deviation above and one standard deviation below the market price as we compute it. And so here's some specific examples that we'll walk through, and then I'll show you the full list at the end as well. But there's some steel professional references in here, one two-tone, and then some white gold as well as yellow gold pieces. But in each of these cases, these are active listings, with one exception, that today are listed for less than the retail price and are fairly recent. And if they're not already below the retail price, they will certainly fall, within the market range and sort of below that retail price level. So those are sort of some of the touch points that we'll be using as we walk through these examples. So let's get started. The first one we'll talk about is the Milgauss reference 116400GV, and specifically the black dial version. The current retail price on this is $9,300. It's a steel professional watch that's selling, like, sort of unique selling point is how anti-magnetic it is. As you can see from the price history chart, it's been trending down over the last year, and then since November seems to have sort of stabilized around the $10,000 mark. But the market range actually for a considerable chunk of that time, basically since September, has actually fallen below the retail price level. And in fact, a very recent listing is for $8,299 just from yesterday. And it's from a reputable seller on Rolex forums. And if you wanted to, you could go buy this watch today. These are all listings that you can sort of see aggregated on our website and at watchcharts.com, and also look up details about the specific model that'll show you the price history chart, as well as a scatter plot for seeing all of the listings available from forums as well as from eBay, both sold and unsold. status. So then the next one we'll actually talk about is the Sea Dweller reference 126600. And this is one where I'm talking specifically about a reference for which the listing that we're going to talk about has actually sold. But the retail price on this is $13,250. And this is another one of the watches where for a steel reference, the market range has certainly fallen below the retail price for a significant chunk of time since last fall, but the market price itself has not, that specific metric has not dropped below the retail price level. But the listing that sold recently on the 10th of March was for $12,500, which is below the market range for this watch. And it sold on eBay, again, from a reputable seller. Now, the reason that it's interesting to talk about steel first is because these are the watches that are the most in demand, and they're usually the ones that predominate the conversation around Rolex selling above retail. So what these examples sort of demonstrate is that there is truth to that story, and certainly the majority of the watches that we'll talk about are either not from the professional family of watches or are not in steel. So the next one we'll move on to is the Explorer reference 124273, which is the two-tone version of this watch. My personal preference actually is for the steel, not because I don't like two-tone or because I don't like the idea of two-tone, because I think those two things, and certainly the execution here is quite beautiful looking. But my sort of pet peeve is that the dial markers and the hands are also yellow gold, which for me sort of spoils the tool watch charm of the Explorer a little bit. It sort of seems to be stuck between being fully precious metal and just being a tool watch. But with this one, the retail price is $11,750. And what you can see is that, again, since last fall, for a significant chunk of time, this watch has solidly sat below its retail price on the secondary market. And the market range in some cases does trend above, the upper bound for the market range certainly does trend above the retail price level, but certainly at the lower bound and the current market price itself are both below the retail price. And so here's a listing, again, very recent on Rolex forums from a very reputable dealer for $10,895. And if you wish, you could go buy this watch today. The next watch that I'm going to talk about moves us into precious metal, but still keeps us in the classic family of watches. This is the Sky Dweller reference 326238, in this instance with a champagne dial. This is the Sky Dweller in precious metal, but with an Oyster Flex bracelet. Its current market price is $38,625, which is considerably below its retail price of $41,050. And that market price has sat below the retail level again since September, October of last year. In this case, even the market range barely crosses the retail price sort of boundary. And so, a recent listing for this watch was listed on Feb 1st for $34,875. And this one, again, is from a very reputable dealer on Rolex forums. Sticking with precious metals, but moving back into the professional family of watches, this is the Yachtmaster 42 reference 226659 with the black dial. So this is a white gold watch, and also comes with a very striking looking Falcon's Eye dial, but here we're talking just about the black dial. And this has a retail price of $30,500. And currently has a market price of $29,850. So it's trended sort of right at the retail price level, and for a significant chunk of time since last fall below that. And certainly there are listings today that you can buy for this watch that are available for less than retail price. In fact, the specific one that we're going to talk about is for $29,000 and was listed the day that this video is being recorded. Again, on Rolex forums from a dealer with a considerable chunk of positive feedback. Complete set with box and papers from a 2021 production model. And then the last two we're going to talk about are also professional family Rolex watches and are also white gold. The first one is the GMT-Master II, reference 126719, with a blue dial. This one is also available with a meteorite dial, but this has a retail price of $40,600. It trended for most of last year above that level, and then finally in December it reached a level that was below that, but the market price since has rebounded to currently in the 42,100 range. But the lower bound of the market range certainly comfortably sits below the retail price level. And in fact, from 25th Feb, there's a listing for $37,994 on eBay that is available for purchase today. And this just shows that watches can sit around for a little while. Certainly when you're talking about precious metal watches like this one, where there is a steel version that's considerably more popular. But if you're on the market for one and you're looking for one from a reputable seller, in this instance from eBay and not from a forum, there are certainly watches out there for you to buy. This one comes with its warranty card. And then the last precious metal professional family Rolex that we're going to talk about is the Submariner date, reference 126619LB, with a blue ceramic bezel and a black dial, again, in white gold, even though at first glance it might look like it's steel. But the retail price on this is $42,000. It has been on a downward trajectory as well since last spring and crossed below the retail price level earlier in the fall, and since then has sort of solidly, for its market price, certainly sat below the retail price level. And the market range obviously bottoms out considerably below that. So the listing in this particular instance that we'll talk about is from about a month ago, is from Feb 23rd, and this is an active listing still for $37,250, again, on Rolex forums. And the reason we talked about this specific set of watches in more detail is because they cover sort of the classic family as well as the professional family of watches from Rolex. There are a bunch of the more popular references that are well understood and sort of recognized by watch enthusiasts. And then, we have a mix of steel and two-tone, and then also precious metal references. But of course, as you may remember from the start of the video, I said there were 72 watches from Rolex, 72 distinct references that you can buy today, where their last computed market price is below the lower bound of the market range as we compute it. And so that's how we're saying basically that if you wanted to go and look for listings for all of these watches, you would be able to find them on watchcharts.com. So hopefully this brings a greater degree of specificity to sort of the general sweeping generalizations that, like I said, I'm certainly also guilty of making, which is that Rolex as a monolith trades above retail, or that all of its market prices are above retail. But as we have demonstrated, that is not the case. Rolex in the popular imagination certainly trades above retail, and so you will have seen that other than one precious metal Daytona reference, for example, no other Daytona features on this list. And also the list is very light on professional sports watches. But taken as a whole, there are certainly dozens and dozens of Rolexes, which if you wanted to, you could go buy today for less than their retail price. Hopefully you enjoyed this style of video and you found it insightful and informative. Let us know in the comments what you would like to see us talk about or dig into next. Thanks for listening.